this summer I'm trying for a 1 acre scale of pulsing electromagnetics for a big garden, just to see how much it's going to produce. I wanted to go back to what Matt said for a second about Victor Schauberger. Do you remember the shape of his hand till? It was it's shaped almost circular and into itself, and when
like
you're
a
pushing
torus,
it literally turns the dirt like this, and it stops microorganisms from being destroyed by the shape of a regular hoe, so to speak, and it's made out of copper. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
It was called the bioplow. That was
the bioplow.
Schauberger bioplow, and it was mimicking nature. It was mimicking the way a mole and a shark cuts through the water and the earth, and it would spin the soil instead of driving in straight lines. Because when you look at Victor Schauberger's work and everything in which he said in all of his books and everything, is that we build in straight lines, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because everything in nature is curving.
Right.
And he even said our planting, like we plant in straight lines, which doesn't make any sense because everything is curving when it's growing together and harmonized together. And he showed with that bioplow how you could just cut right through the earth really easily, and you don't have to use as much work, right? And he even showed too with copper shovels versus iron shovels how a copper shovel will just slide right in the earth. You don't have to do as much work. And an iron shovel, you got to jump on it and kick it and try to get into the earth because of the magnetics, obviously.
It's resistant.
So
it's just amazing.
It's wild, like all of his work and everything. And Schauberger was a genius when it came to that. And that's why even when you look at his inventions and all of the stuff he was talking about, he was saying if we use that energy, we could be creating devices that spin, and they would create energy, and we wouldn't have to use these, like, for example, automobiles that are only 13% efficient, right? Because he even said, like, our engine is 13% efficient. He's like, we could have free energy that's 100% the whole time spinning, but we're doing this stuff all backwards.
I'm working on free energy stuff right now, so I know the gist about all that. I just finished my alternator generator that I won't say it runs itself because that would be wrong, but there's 3 alternators on it. One motor runs the system, and I'm producing 370 amps, 12 volt that goes into a battery bank, and the third alternator charges the 48 volt battery bank that runs the system. So I won't say it runs itself, but it's very efficient.
It's a closed system pretty much, is it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen John Keely's work?
Yes. Love John Keely.
You could mimic that and use that, and there you go. That's that bioplow right there, that beautiful thing.
You know, the scientific community that Bernie and everybody has kind of gotten together here, I believe can build that plow, and I'm going to attempt to my very best to somehow pull guys together to construct that, because that is an amazing system.
Heck yeah.
It's so cool.
Right?
What is copper more expensive than, I mean, I'm not sure. How much more, what's the price difference between that if it was made with steel?
Not much.
Like it's silver.
Not much?
No.
Cool. And I'm thinking copper would be easier to work with than steel.
The prototype will cost you a bit of cash, because you're looking at, by the looks of things, that looks like maybe a 1/4 inch. You could do it out of brass, but I believe copper is going to work better. So.
And shout out to my mom who posted that link on Facebook for me and is watching.
Yes, shout out to Bernie's mom.
But that's so. I was going to say, if you see that design to it, it's mimicking nature, the curves. You know, it's not in a straight. It's kind of like if all of us went on a run, like right now, and we all took a straight pipe and held it behind us and tried to run. You know, we're not going to be able to run too far. Like it's it's just the comment, the looking at it in a common way. This would cut right through the dirt.
Right, the vortex.
Yep. Yeah, and I've looked at it. It's very interesting how the dirt comes in and it gets stopped and then it turns around on itself.
Yes.
So it's amazing.
It's literally a torus, right? It's
exactly. Well, it creates the torus motion.
It creates a torus effect of the outside to in and then inside to out. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not, I don't know if it's a torus. It's very strange. I don't know what you would call it. It's not quite a torus.
It's not quite, yeah.
This reminds me of what I was going to say. This reminds me of what Victor Schauberger said about the fish and how the fish levitate up the stream. Because when their fins are going like this, they're creating multiple vortexes, right, to make them levitate up the stream. So same thing with that. If you think about it, the soil, like you just said, is going both directions at the same time, but spinning. Yeah. So you're creating you're vortexing your soil while it moves through, right? It's probably the best of both worlds. Or structuring, if we were to take it into structure, you're keeping the structure intact.
Yeah, you're allowing the microorganisms to stay intact because all you're doing is moving them. You're not actually cutting through them, so to speak.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually, Gerald.
And the iron, it would seem like it almost grounds out the charge in some way, whereas the copper would move through the charge in the soil. So it almost act like a...
That's what...
Wait, go ahead.
Between the iron and the copper, like going into the ground shovel, like that's what my mind set on, is like it freezes it or like sticks it together as opposed to separating it because of the charge in the fields. And very similar, like putting a magnet through copper, and you see how it changes stuff that the earth, I guess, is similar with its electric field.
I believe Matt brought it up in one of his videos prior. It had to do with the elements in the soil, I believe you said. I think it was something to that.
When the iron's going into the soil, it's diminishing the magnetism or the life force of the soil. So it makes it really hard to work with, and it clumps it all up and blocks it all up. And then when the copper goes in, it's not altering any of the magnetics of the earth. So it just slides right in. And then you're also replenishing it, like you just said. You're replenishing it with copper, which is very beneficial, versus when you're putting all that iron. It's interesting because if you go to the hardware store and you look at a lot of like the bottled products that they sell, a lot of the poisonous products that they sell, a lot of them are all very high in iron. So they know what they're telling you, right? They know what they're giving you. They're low in copper, high in iron. And that's because it's blocking up all the root system too, right? Because if you think about it, it's interesting because like iron, I was redoing some research. Iron is the only thing that mercury won't take over. And that kind of made me think about some stuff to go, that's interesting, right? All the other metals, mercury will eat it. But iron, for some reason, it won't eat it.
Not iron.
Yeah, it's the one that they
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, that's something new I've learned. Thanks. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I was thinking about those, the antennas that they used to do, right? Those brass antennas on top of those buildings, and some of them did have mercury in them. But then maybe what it was a layer, right? They're using all the elements at the same time, which is what we're doing with Electro-Culture, using the elements. But I think maybe they could have had iron in the inside, mercury in the bowl, and then brass on the outside, and then copper through the spire, right? So you had all the different elements as it would use in alchemy, right? And then as the sun would hit it and heat it up, it would create a gas, and then that gas could, like, it's all this. Yeah, it's like
interesting.
I think of all these things related to.
It's like a stack battery too. Like that makes sense.
Well, that's part of it actually. Electro-Culture kind of there's a galvanized mechanism that happens in there between the different metals when you're putting it together and running that line down the post. That's why when you put it up 25 feet, you're grabbing the potential that's in the air. I believe it's every 3 meters. It's 100 volts. So, for 25 feet, it's interesting. I love it.
And it's all been shown. They did all this. If you look in the patents, atmospheric energy, like I said, they used to send balloons up in the air and collect the energy. Yep. So it's like, why don't we just do this and then help our plants and then also help heal ourselves too, right? Because a lot of people have been messaging me and been telling me that their whole garden and house feels like a completely different, like a sanctuary because of all the antennas they've placed. My buddy, for example, in Australia, he's got like probably 200 antennas in his backyard. And he said when people come over, they're like, the energy is totally different in this area compared to like when they leave. And his dogs, his name is Daniel, his dogs are always sitting next to the antennas and laying next to them at all times. They don't leave, they're always sitting there, you know, so they know.
My cats, like, I do experiments. Sorry, go ahead, Campbell.
I was just going to say, so you can't overdo it by the sounds of it with antennas and stuff, or I guess it's all experimental.
It is experimental, but I don't think you can really, you know, overdo it, so to say. It depends on how you ran it, right? Like if you covered everything in copper and your whole house is in copper, then
yeah, copper
be the best idea, you know. But I think everything in balance. But yeah, it's wild to see like just certain things and people getting like different pollinators they've never had before, right? Different types of butterflies. My buddy said he's got like blue butterflies or I'm sorry, not blue bees. I never even heard of a blue bee before.
Blue bees?
Yeah, and he's actually I talked to him yesterday on a podcast. He's in Australia, and he said he's got like blue bees flying around. So a lot of stuff that I think we don't even know exists, right? Because we've only been
pictures of these. Like that's fascinating.
Yeah, like we don't even know what's really out there, right? And I've had like on my balcony, I've had praying mantises. You know, in Arizona, which normally you don't see a praying mantis, just you see scorpions, you know, you see snakes, but you don't see mantises. There's really no mantis here. And then I've seen gigantic grasshoppers. I've seen, you know, you got birds, hawks, falcons, hummingbirds, sparrows, you know, all of them, they pick up on this stuff. And the question is how many other species of things we don't even know can also pick up on that?
Can I add to the antenna and how the energy flows?
Of course.
When I do pulsing experiments on my workbench, and then I stop and I'll clear it off for the next experiment I'm going to do, my cats will jump up on my workbench and go to sleep exactly where I've done the experiment every single time. So when you say that your friend has a bunch of antennas in the yard, what I believe is happening is it's capturing the flow that's coming in, and it's going straight through to the soil. So that area is the flow of energy that everybody's feeling. That's the amazing part. And the more antennas, the more flow. That's what my belief is. I don't know.
I totally agree with you on that one.
That's
awesome. I mean, if it's a tour, if you know, if this place is a toroid, then that's the movement, right? Bringing from the top into the ground and then back out again, kind of thing. So they're literally sitting in where the energy's, you know, like flowing down into the earth and through them. Yeah, right.
And just like grounding your own energy. Though, right? Sorry. Like taking the rubber off of your shoes, you got to ground, walk on natural earth. It's essentially grounding that the earth even more so up.
Yeah, that's an interest. And they used to use copper and brass a lot more in like shoes and belts and all this kind of stuff, didn't they? And now the same thing, it's all gone to metal. And even utensils, right? They're now all stainless steel. I remember when I was young, I asked, you know, why are the royals called blue bloods? And I got told that it's because they ate off silverware, like solid silverware, and it actually made their tongues go blue. So I don't know if that's true. That's what I got told. But
right? It's like I don't think it actually oxidizes like that.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Because then it turns
Someone
into
had said a reptilian.
If it oxidizes, you need the monoatomic. So that doesn't really make sense.
Well, I can see that with the slugs. Slugs are blue bloods, right? And crabs and certain animals are blue bloods. So it's interesting when you start putting copper in your soil, the slugs all go away. They don't want to come and clean up the iron anymore. That's all being placed into it. So that's an interesting one with them. And there was a guy who talked about that, who studied Victor Schauberger, and he explained how the iron oxides are going into the soil, and then the slugs are going to come up. And once you start placing copper in there, like, okay, the soil's good. I don't need to go there anymore. And then they go somewhere else.
Oh, so okay, that's interesting. So basically, Yeah, because we've got to look at this as a